Hey guys, can you hear me loud and clear? Can I get a quick confirmation one last time so we can get started?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, perfect. Thank you so much, guys, and welcome to Agiletics and welcome to the PMP demo session. So what we're going to be doing here today is going over a few topics with regards to PMP and how it would help you. All right, so we have our industry expert, Mr. Krishna Kumar, who has joined us, and he will be taking us further with this demo session. All right, so before we do that, a quick introduction about Agiletics. If you can see my screen here, this is basically who we are. Agiletics, we are established in the year 2013. We have our headquarters in Singapore, and we do also have our branches across the globe where we are in Dubai, Australia, India. In India, we are at Noida and Bangalore. All right. So about Agiletics, we are official training partners with Hortonworks and Google. Okay, and we are official testing partners with Criterion and PSI. All right, and we also do offer professional training courses across different domains. All right, so be it project management, data science, business intelligence, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, DevOps, digital marketing, cybersecurity, agile and Scrum, IT security, software development, Salesforce, and quality management. Okay, so we have all the courses listed here. We have different courses that we provide across different domains. All right, so PMP is a part of the project management certifications which we offer. All right, so without further ado, we will get started with the demo wherein I will be, passing the presenter access to our trainer. All right, and also guys, we have a quick, ground rule for this particular session. We request all the participants to stay on mute throughout the session so that we do not have any background noise during the session. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can definitely post that in the chat window. And also we will be having a 10 to 15 minutes of question and answer round towards the end of the session. So I would request your cooperation, and we can save those questions to the end of the session so that we can have Krishna answering all those questions for you. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to be passing the presenter access to our trainer, and he will be taking over from here. All right, over to you, Krishna. All right, so guys, I'm so sorry for the delay. I'm just waiting for Krishna to take over from here. So just give me a quick minute. Let me just check if everything is fine on the
I,
technical end.
I'm extremely sorry. I've been talking, but when you, I believe when you transfer the host access, it got unmuted by default. I'm extremely
Okay.
sorry.
No
Okay.
issues, Krishna. All the
Okay.
way. All
All right.
yours.
In fact, you can see that annotation also here. Okay. All right, team. Sorry about that, and welcome to this webinar, and greetings to all of you. Just a brief introduction about myself. I am Krishna Kumar Kupaswamy. You can call me Krish or KK. I'm a PMP professional since 2009, and I have over 20 years experience in IT industry. And currently, I'm a corporate trainer doing trainings across project management areas, especially on this PMP. I'm also PMI certified, ACP certified. So I do trainings on Agile, and I'm also an Agile coach where I help organization, kind of who are transitioning from waterfall or traditional to Agile methodology. So I do some consulting there as well, and I'm an ITL expert also doing for courses on ITL Foundation and intermediate courses, and the CBAP, which is the business analysis from IIBA. So I conduct training all these areas. So conduct more than 100 plus trainings across all these project management across corporates, different professionals, and I would say around 2,000 plus professionals I would have trained across all these industries, and all these certifications and other courses. So that's a brief introduction. So let us move on to the today's agenda. So this is for all the PMP aspirants who would like to know what PMP and what is there in the PMBOK 6th edition. What is PMBOK and what is Agile? What are the contents that are in Agile Practice Guide today? And how is PMP going to help deliver projects? Help the managers deliver projects, and leave behind and look beyond is something like, what is that when you're getting into a PMP training and trying to take up the certification, what is that I have to unlearn? What is that I'm going to learn something, right? So leave behind and look beyond is what is that. And then just a very small tip on exam preparation, and we will just look at a couple of sample questions. So just to get a feel of, how the PMP situational questions are going to be. Okay. So with that, we'll just move on to the first one. So PMBOK we call, which is Project Management Body of Knowledge. It is nothing but a fundamental resource. I'm sorry. It is a fundamental resource for effective project management in any industry. So that can be applied across any industry sectors, whether it be IT, pharmaceuticals, or any manufacturing, construction, anywhere. So it is developed by active practitioners. So when we mean by practitioners and SMEs, subject matter experts, which means they have already put it into practice. So these are all proven practices which are consolidated, and the project management professionals and PMI has evaluated, validated all those practices, and then we have the PMBOK right now. So this is called generally recognized and good practice. So what do we mean by generally recognized? Generally recognized means that the knowledge and practices, that are described, which are applicable to most projects most of the time here. And there is a widespread consensus that about their value and usefulness of, the whatever is described in the PMBOK. So that we call it as generally recognized. And good practice means that there is general agreement that the correct application, whatever we are learning here, right? So all the correct application, use of the skills, so whatever the tools and techniques that we are learning, those will enhance the chances of success over a wide range of projects. So that is what we mean by good practice here. So it's kind of a PMBOK gives us a good framework for us to work on the project management areas. And it provides guidelines. So we call it as a guide to a PMBOK, guide to a project management body of knowledge, right? So it provides guidelines to manage individual projects by easily breaking down project management steps. So I'll probably give you one example of how the project management steps that could be here. For example, if I want to define a scope, or if I want to baseline a scope, for example. So in the scope management, we talk about multiple processes, sequence of steps that can be, implemented. So first is we define how we are going to define requirements, how we are going to collect the requirements, how we are going to manage the scope, how we are going to control the scope. So the how will be defined in the scope management plan. And then we go to the next step of collecting the requirements by way of utilizing some of the tools and techniques. And then once we collect the requirements, now we define the scope. See, there's a lot of, when I interact with a lot of participants, right? So a lot of people get confused between whether requirements is from scope or scope is from requirements. So this steps really clearly states that, you need to collect requirements and then define a scope. So when you define a scope, which means you come up with a project scope statement, which is then talk about what is in scope and out of scope clearly. And then finally, we create a WBS, which is a work breakdown structure, which is nothing but decomposing the scope in multiple, smaller modules, and we call them as work packages in a project management, vocabulary. So, which is going to have all the deliverables. So now, at this stage, we are going to baseline the scope. So for me to baseline a scope, these are all the sequence of steps that we follow. Here we are talking about 4 processes. Similarly, if I want to baseline a time or schedule or baseline a cost, you have multiple processes that are there. So that is the breaking down of these project management steps will clearly, it will make the project managers life easily, and in a very, very systematic approach, you will be able to, come up with a plan and execute the project. And this also, the guide also attempts to standardize the project management tasks so that the entire team are on the same page while, when it comes to overseeing the project processes. So one of the key things which is defined in PMI as part of your PMP preparation, if you see that, the code of ethics and social responsibility, professional and social responsibility. That is not only you become a PMP, and if you're going to put it into your practice, then you need to mentor your team members on the project management also. So now that once you learn all these processes, you're also going to educate the team members, and this really will, this will really get the entire team onto the same page when you're defining or practicing all these processes. Then the key thing is a common lexicons. There's nothing but the vocabulary. So we are going to talk the common language. I think there are people, okay. There are common language, that is, we speak a common language across the organization. So we learn, there are a lot of terms that we probably, interchangeably use. For example, the quality and a grade, or where we try to talk about requirements versus expectations, right? So there are a few terms which, we learn it in the right sense, and we will use a lot of other project management terms in a very, in a right manner, putting in the right context so that we speak common language. So that's about the PMBOK, at a high level. And with respect to the 6th edition, which was released in September 2017, right? And now the 6th edition has come into effect from 26 March 2018 from exam perspective. So it's almost exactly 3 months now since the exams are in this edition right now. And the key changes, some of the changes is, from the knowledge area wise, the project time management earlier is moved to, it's been renamed to schedule management. So it makes sense. We are not managing time in a project, rather we are managing the schedule. And in earlier editions, the focus was on project human resource management generally. Now, we have moved to resources generally, because it's not only the team, it's not only the human resources, but what are all the other resources like raw materials or machines or whatever that we are going to use in the project. So, giving due importance to them as well. And one of the other key changes in the change in names in the processes. For example, trying to clearly identify what needs to be monitored and what needs to be controlled. So for example, earlier editions, we had control communications, and now it has been moved to monitor communication. So because it's not possible for us to control the communication, we can monitor how it is being done. Similarly, controlling risk has been changed to monitor risk. So these are all some of the process name changes that has been introduced here. And the other key thing is trends and emerging practices. So though we are, following all the traditional approaches, so here and there, there are some emerging practices that has come up. For example, this emerging practices, trend and emerging practices has been defined for all the knowledge areas, all the 10 knowledge areas that we have in our PMP. So, for example, I'll take one knowledge area, the scope management. The one of the key trends and emerging practices is what we're talking about, the rolling wave planning or progressive elaboration. So that is nothing but, progressive elaboration is something that I keep elaborating the scope, and it doesn't mean the scope is elaborated horizontally, but vertically, in the sense, for example, if I'm creating a project plan today, I know what are the deliverables that's going to happen probably in the next six months from now. But what are the different activities I'm going to get that deliverables out, right? So that probably I may not have a clarity now. Maybe, when I reach the 5th month or closer to the milestone, I will have better clarity. So that is what we call progressive elaboration. As we move, as we progress in the project, we elaborate our project plan. So these are all some of the terms that, again, if you look at it, from an agile perspective, also we can talk, which I will talk in the next slide. So these are something which has been introduced in the 6th edition. Okay. And if you look at the structure overall, the PMBOK talks about introduction to project management first, where clearly defining what a project is, what a program is, what a portfolio is, roles and responsibilities of a project management office. So some basic terms which needs to be understood by everybody in a right sense. And then environments in which projects operate. So this talks about, what are the factors that's going to influence the way you're going to run a project. So I may be a project manager it's a good experience, let's say, and 2 different organizations are going to handle the same project. Let's assume even that with respect to resource skill set, everything is same, requirements are same. But if I'm going to execute in organization A and organization B, I may not be able to do the same way, because the factors that can influence the way I run a project could be internal to the organization, which is your organization culture, and the organization structure could influence the way. And other factors, external factors that could influence the way you handle projects, or even for the projects to be even introduced, is due to political factors, maybe economic factors, which may really influence when you do costing. Maybe some government compliances, regulations, which may force you to do projects as well. For example, in India, if you take GST, but that forced many other organizations, many retailers, everybody to come up with the software, right? So these are all the factors that will influence. So this chapter talks about that. And then in 6th edition, it's clearly defining the roles of a project manager. So what are the different roles and responsibility of a project manager is clearly defined. Earlier editions was lacking that. So I think PMI has come out deliberately and wanted to clearly mention the different roles and responsibilities. And then it goes up to the other knowledge areas, all the 10 knowledge areas, starting from integration management, and then they have the scope, time, cost, schedule, quality, risk, communication, stakeholder, procurement, and these are all other knowledge areas. So integration is nothing but a project manager is going to integrate everything. A project manager cannot say that, today, Monday, he's going to work on a scope, Tuesday is going to work on time, and Wednesday is going to work on cost management. That's not going to happen, right? So all the 9 knowledge areas are always integrated. So project manager, whenever he's working, it's integration he's doing. But the PMI comes up with the other 9 knowledge areas to really, this is the breaking down into project management steps, right? So clearly explaining, what are the different things that we need to look at in different knowledge areas, though the project manager is going to only integrate. Okay, so talking about these 10 knowledge areas, covering the 5 process groups here. Process groups is initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing, and 49 processes. So actually in the 5th edition, there was 47. So some were removed and some were added. Now we have 49 processes. So overall, this is what we should be looking at from a PMP exam perspective, as well as for us to learn something. Across these 10 knowledge areas and 5 process group, these 49 are spread across these. So we need to be, understand what these 49 processes are. And when we talk about a process, again, process is nothing but, we have input, process, output. That's what we would have learned, right? So every process will have an input, which is going to trigger that process, which means I have to do some actions. and those actions are going to get me some output. So those actions, so we have called input, and those actions here are used with T and T and O, which means the tools and techniques here. So that's what we call it as ITTO here, the tools and techniques. So with the inputs, using the tools and techniques, we are going to get the output. Okay. So for example, again, simple example, let me take collect requirements is the process. So for me to collect the requirements, I have the project charter, I have the scope management plan as an input here. And now I'm going to use the tools and techniques. The technique I'm going to use is, for example, the data gathering. So here, so what is the data gathering technique? It is like, I may conduct interviews with the stakeholders, I may do a workshop, I may do a focus groups, I may conduct a surveys, questionnaires, whatever. So whatever the type of, however I want to do. So I collect the requirements. So this is a technique that I'm using here. And output is going to be, I'm going to get a requirements document and probably a requirement traceability matrix. So that's going to be the output of this process. So all the 49 processes are going to have input, and that's going to be defined with the tools and techniques, and then we get an output. Okay. And coming to tools and techniques, I've just mentioned few of them here. So let me just remove some here for clarity. So few of them. So for example, those techniques I use for collect requirements, right? So that is consolidated as data gathering. Earlier editions, if you see, those were separate techniques that were mentioned for these processes. Now PMI has consolidated a lot of techniques into one umbrella. So for example, data analysis, let's take. So data analysis is analyzing data, fine, but what type of analysis? So if I apply to let's say, quality control process, so what is the data analysis I'm going to do there? So maybe I'm going to do a root cause analysis, maybe I'm going to do a Pareto, maybe I'm going to do a checklist, whatever. Then if I apply the same data analysis to controlling a schedule as a process, different process, so maybe there I'm doing a variance analysis. So variance analysis is I'm trying to see if there is any variance between the planned versus actual today. So all these, we will use the same data gathering or a data analysis for multiple processes, but we need to understand what will apply for that process. That's exactly what we are going to learn. So lots of tools and techniques that are available, which we'll be learning as a project manager. Maybe some of them we are accustomed to, some of them, which is very new, which you can even go and start implementing it. Then, for example, data representation is like a flow chart, maybe a mind mapping or affinity diagrams, how we are going to represent the data. So overall, so this is what the PMBOK guide gives you, and the 6th edition changes I've just spoken about. Okay. So, so I'm not covering in depth, so I'm just giving you a heads up here on each of the topic, and then any further questions I can take. So let's move on to the next section, which is Agile Practice Guide. So this is one section that you can see at the end of the PMBOK guide itself, Guide to PMBOK 6th edition. Agile Practice Guide it's a collaborative effort from PMI and Agile Alliance. So now that, we all see that a lot of organizations transitioning from traditional to Agile, right? Agile practices. So again, I believe based on best practices, based on some industry experts, again, PMI also is thinking about, collaborating with Agile and then coming out with some introducing some practices here as well. So this is the content of the Agile Practice Guide overall. So the introduction to Agile talks about, just a section talks about what is definable versus high uncertainty work. Definable work is something that we know exactly what we are going to do. For example, constructing a house. I know I have a plan, I'm going to design accordingly, or production of a car. So I know the design. So which is predictable. So we can probably go with a predictive life cycle here. But high uncertainty work, which is going to take us, we don't know what type of changes are going to come in. So that's defined here. And then this also talks about the Agile mindset. Again, the reason it says mindset is Agile is a mindset really, because we need to have that mindset for us to go forward. So even when I do go to a lot of corporates and talk about Agile, people who are even experienced, 20 years experience, they say, oh, why Agile? When things are moving on with traditional, why do you need really Agile? So, first we need to understand and should have a mindset for us to do that. And so the Agile talks about the key things which we call it as values here. And those values are supported by 12 principles and practices. So the values here is, if you look at these values, which is on the things on the right side, for example, processes and tools, exactly that's what we are going to learn here, all the 49 processes, and we are going to learn all the tools and techniques. And comprehensive documentation, again, every single process that we are talking about here is going to have some kind of a documentation. So for example, the plan scope management comes with the scope management plan. Collect requirements comes with the requirements management plan and the requirement traceability matrix. Defined scope comes with the project scope statement. So we are doing a comprehensive documentation is happening in our traditional one. Then the contract negotiation, we'll be talking more about the fixed price, different types of contracts, how to stick to it. And then following a plan, obviously that's what we are trying to do, right? So we are trying to continuously monitor and try to see whether is there any variance, how do I control it? So, but if you look at the items on the left, which is individuals and interactions, so Agile is looking at a different way, like, now, though it doesn't say processes and tools is not important, it is, but individuals and interactions, that is face-to-face communication, conversation is given more precedence over the processes and tools. And then, I don't know, you may have multiple documentations, fine. Say, for example, I may send a status report to a customer saying 20% complete, 50% complete, 95% complete, fine. But what does it give to the customer? Nothing, right? As long as it is 100% complete, customer is not going to see any value there. So that's where a working software over comprehensive documentation. So, I mean, instead of focusing more on documentation, let's focus on getting the software working. And then, I mean, here software is, I mean, it was introduced for an IT, but this is now being extended to any industry as well. So anything that is, you can show it as an increment, product increment to a customer. Then contract negotiation, instead of negotiating on the contract, collaborate with the customer, try to understand the value that the customer is going to get. What is the outcome that the customer is going to look at? So we'll be talking about output versus outcome also. And then instead of following a plan, I mean, responding to change, that is be very adaptable for changes as well. So these are the 4 values that is also defined in this practice guide. And talking about the life cycle selection, this is based on uncertainty and risk. So if you have a low uncertainty and low risk, probably you can go with the predictive life cycle. Maybe if your project requirements are highly unstable or highly uncertain or highly risk, then maybe you can go for adaptive life cycle. So it talks about the life cycle selection based on these 2 parameters. And coming to life cycle selection, again, you can talk about, predictive, predictive, then iterative, then you have incremental, then you have agile. So when we talk about agile life cycle, we combine these 2. It is both incremental as well as iterative. So the life cycle selection talks about these areas. And then how to create an agile environment by, of course, starting with an agile mindset first. And then this focuses on more on servant leadership. If people are here know about agile. So traditional methodology talks about leadership in terms of democratic or authoritative or delegative type of leadership where things come from top to bottom. So it's kind of a push, right? So whereas servant leadership is something like you are an enabler. You are a leader by example, enabling the team to work, empowering the team to work. And Agile speaks about self-organizing teams. So nobody is there to give work. The team pulls work from what is required. And the team composition talks about the cross-functional teams as a unit. And it talks about delivering an agile environment. So creating an agile project charter and coming up with the team. Common agile practices. So what are the practices? So this here also it's there. Practices. We can go for Scrum, you can go for Kanban, XP, Crystal, DSGM. There are a lot of practices which follows all these 12 principles and which will be within these 4 values. So depending on the type of environment, again, like I said, the organization structure, culture, and all those things. So depending on the need, then the organizations go for specific practices. And I would say Scrum is being implemented in most of the organizations. Scrum, Kanban is very famous. Then troubleshooting the agile project challenges and measurement. So what are the different type of measurements that we try to do? So especially when we are transitioning from traditional to agile, we need to know how it works. Is it really working or not? So what are the different type of measurements? Maybe, the burn up chart, burn down charts, then the calculating the velocity of the team, which is the nothing but the productivity of the team, how much the team can deliver within a particular sprint, and so on. And then finally, one section talks about organizational considerations for project agility. So which is, again, how, what is a change agent? Because when we are transitioning again, so from traditional, so like I said, it's a culture, right? And change is a big thing. So what are the different aspects that we need to consider when we try to put in this change? So this practice guide is very good. Actually, talks about, not too much detail in agile, but really, when we are going to have a hybrid kind of things where a lot of people are using the traditional as well as this agile combination, depending on the nature of the work. So this really helps us understand agile in a very, very high level context. Okay. So that's about this agile practice guide, which is along with the PMBOK 6th edition. And now I'm moving on to the next one, which is how PMP helps manage or deliver projects. Here, the reason I just took this topic is, a lot of people have a perception that, okay, today I'm going to be PMP certified and tomorrow onwards, and, my project is going to be successful. I wouldn't deny completely, but at the same time, it's kind of a myth again. So when we talk about a PMP, PMP certification, again, first thing is for practitioners, and surely it's not for beginners. So when I say practitioners, again, you don't need to be a project manager, but as long as you are directing and managing tasks, even at a very high level, as long as you understand what a project management environment is, that's more than enough, but surely not for 100% beginners of project management. So this helps, the PMP helps the practitioners in a very practical way. So, but okay, now I want to go for a certification, fine. So I have a guide to PMBOK, which is available from PMI, fine. So can I just go ahead and read, and can I go and write the exam? If that is a question, then I would say it's highly impossible, but surely, it's probably not that easy. In the sense, you need a training. Training is very much important, necessary for you to understand the concepts or the framework that is defined in PMBOK in a better way. So PMBOK, reading a PMBOK 600 odd pages, it's kind of an abstract, I would say. It is good. We need to learn it, but training is really going to help us. The trainers, the professionals who have been practitioners will help make you understand all these processes in a much better practical way with examples, and you will be able to understand in a better perspective rather than just going by theory. So surely the training is important for getting the PMP certifications, and that's one of the reasons why I believe even PMI is saying that for you to apply for the PMP, right? So you need to have gone through one 35 contact hour certificate from REP. So that's important. And surely you're going to learn a common framework and a vocabulary. Like I said, the lexicons is provided, complete project management lexicon is there. So we start speaking the same language. And the important thing is an entire spectrum of project management. So what I mean by this is, as a manager, today I may be working in, let's say I'll just take one scenario, or maybe I've been working on a time and material project for the last 5 or 10 years, okay? But I know what is fixed bid is, what is a fixed bid, but I may not know what are the other different type of contracts that are available, because even my organization is really not into those type of contracts. Say, for example, we have the T&M, we have the fixed price contracts, and we have the cost reimbursable contracts. So this is one simple example I'm taking. So I get to know the entire spectrum. Those are the areas that I'm not working, I'll get to know. And also those areas that I'm currently working, am I doing it in the right way? Or is there any improvement for me to look for? So that also I'll get to know, with this entire spectrum. I see some, what is this? Some kind of error marks coming here, the slide. Okay. So then we also get to know the roles and responsibilities of project manager. Like I explained, the roles of project manager is clearly defined. And then we also try to learn certain things. Sometimes we may not be aware this is part of the project manager's role. And of course, the systematic approach of managing projects by way of understanding all these knowledge areas and practices, right? So this way, by through training, you really get to know the concepts in a better manner. And then after training, surely, okay, let's assume that you get prepared for the PMP, you go and get the certification. But how is it really going to help? Because PMI doesn't tell you how to run a project. So it's providing a framework for us, providing the lot of tools and techniques and processes, but it is up to us to go and implement it. So can I go and implement everything, all 49 processes? Not, probably not. And in fact, in our projects, probably we are not using all these 49 also. So, whichever is applicable. And again, one example, which from my experience, I'm just given this example, some of the tools and techniques, right? So for example, the EVM or critical path. So critical path is try to understand what is the critical path in a project and try to see how we can create a, control the schedule in terms of, if we have deviated, what is the schedule compression techniques that are available, like fast tracking, crashing. Then we have, the earned value management to calculate SPI, CPI, which is going to talk about the productivity and the cost over and other things. So you get to know certain things which may have, heard about these terms, but we are going to learn in a very, formal manner, and we can start practicing all these things. For example, requirements gathering, we spoke about RTM. In fact, honestly, when I did, before doing PMP, I was not aware of RTM, requirement traceability matrix. And that's where, after getting to know, I started implementing, and I can surely see some changes, because most of the times when I deliver projects, customer at the end, the moment comes and says, or during UAT comes and says, this requirement is not there. So this, with this RTM as a tool or a document, we are able to trace it. So it's a very, very simple example. Maybe it's obvious today, but that time it was something new to me. So a lot of techniques that you will come across, which you will start, learning something new, I can start putting it to practice. So one more thing, like for example, whenever I was spoken to managers and during conducting classes, so especially when it comes to risk response, how will you handle a risk? Then they say we'll mitigate. So mitigate is the one term that we know, but there are a lot of other responses, like how do you transfer a risk, how do you exploit, how do you enhance it, how do you avoid a risk, how do you accept it? Acceptance. So what are the different risk responses that are there for whether it is a threat, if it's a negative risk, or an opportunity if it is a positive risk, right? So we try to learn something. So that's where I'm talking about the entire spectrum again. So we are not confined to what we are doing today. We get to know the entire 360 degree. And once we start putting those tools and techniques into practice, slowly, then you can really see there is some kind of an improvement in the way you are delivering projects. And which I have seen after PMP, probably over 2 or 3 projects, I could state that, confidently that there are at least 25 to 30% improvement, especially with respect to schedule and handling, managing requirements and expectations from the stakeholders. Okay, so that's about about this slide, and this
Krish,
one especially.
Yeah, hi Krish. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question regarding.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Can you just tell me what EVM stands for?
Earned value management. Earned value management, calculating the earned value, planned value, and coming up with SPI. SPI is schedule index. I'm sorry, schedule performance index and cost performance index.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So this particular slide, I just wanted to tell a couple of words here. Not much time. The reason is, when I have seen a lot of participants go for a PMP, there are two things that we need to keep in mind. One, if you have enough experience, right? We have done a lot of projects, let's say 15 years experience in project management. Now I want to do a PMP. So the way we are going to learn things in an organized way, right? So we are used to doing certain things already. So that I would say, on a first day before even coming to the class, just unlearn, because it's like, you need to look at as if you're going to learn something new. So that's where, you'll be able to learn it in a very organized. Otherwise, what happens is, on my experience, I'm saying with the participants, like whenever we go through the questions, they say, no, this is the way we handle it. So why do we need to look in a different way? But I mean, the reason why we are getting into a training and why we want to get the certification is to learn in a standardized, in a systematic approach, and how to approach it in the right manner, because all these are based on proven practices again. So that's where I would say unlearn whatever you are doing today and learn. Focus on learning more. And again, understanding in PMI way of doing things. Understand more on PMI way of doing things. So that way, when you start learning the concepts, right? So you will be, we can relate to what we are doing today, but not too much on what my organization is doing. Rather than you should be having a mindset of what PMI is saying and how to approach situations. So that's what I would like to tell you on unlearning and learn something new and start putting things into practice. And just a final slide, last but one. So I'm just this kind of a exam preparation tips. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do I put certain things in practice? My organization may not allow. Fine, that's okay. So you don't need to put the entire project into practice. You don't need to take all the processes and everything. So one thing I tell my participants is, okay, whatever you have learned in the 4 days of PMP training, right? So we have learned some processes. Now take this PMP exam preparation itself as a project. So that itself, take that as a project. Now we have all these process group: initiate, through, execute, monitor, control, and close. So initiate, first enroll yourself for training, which is mandatory anyway. So attend the training with the motive of learning the techniques, not only focusing on exam. The reason I'm putting not focusing on exam, though that is the objective and that's the outcome. But what happens is, again, on my experience, when I go to corporates where management is really sponsoring them for training, and they say, you need to get this certified by within 30 days or 45 days. So that kind of puts a pressure on people, and people feel that, okay, I want to get certified, so I need to go through the questions. Right from day one, they ask me how the questions are going to be. Can you run through the questions? Running through a question is fine, but once we start learning, once we start understanding all these processes, understanding all these tools, techniques, and just dive in, automatically, you will be able to apply those techniques, and then you will be able to solve the question. Because most of the questions are going to be very situational questions, which I'll be running you through the next couple of next slides. 2 questions I have running as a poll. We'll see that. Okay, so then that's the initiation that you're doing. And then once you're done with the training, apply for the exam. You don't need to pay anything, except for if you want to become a member, you got to pay $129 plus $10. Otherwise, you don't need to pay for applying for the exam. So once you apply for the exam, the reason I ask you to apply for the exam is, you may be audited and your application may be audited. It's a very random audit. It has nothing to do with the contents of your application. So that will take some time to go through the processes by getting signatures with references and so on. So apply, and then PMI will take, in case if your application is not audited, PMI will take a couple of weeks to a week or two to approve your application. And then once you get notified, from that date of approval, you have 1 year to take the exam. But anyway, I would suggest, people to take the exam within 3 months maximum, not beyond that, because you will lose the focus as well. So, come up with a plan. Now we would have learned all the, in planning, you have 24 processes in planning out of this 49, right? So apply some of the processes and try to come up with a plan of taking, covering all these knowledge areas, then come up with a plan for taking 4 or 5 simulation exams. Now you start executing. So now you go through the study process. So maybe I would say, if not all the processes, at least you will be able to apply some processes on scope, time, and schedule, cost, because probably you may want to incur cost for scheduling the exam. You may want to incur cost for buying some reference books. So apply these processes as part of this project, and then see, look at the risks. Probably what are the different type of risks that may, hinder you to get this prepared for the exam. So start applying. So this is one good way of applying at least 5 or 10 processes out of 49, so that it's within your control. It has nothing. Nobody else is going to really come and say this. You cannot do this. It's within your control. Maybe in the organization, it may be difficult to implement everything, but within your project, within your team, you can implement some of the tools and techniques. So this way, you can start implementing, preparing for the exam as a project itself, monitor your study and do a control mechanisms. And finally, once you're done, schedule for the exam and pass the exam and close the project. So, that's a very high level tip I'm just giving you here. And once you enroll for PMP, and once we go through, I'll surely, we'll provide a lot of other tips in terms of, appearing for the exam as well. So we don't have much time. I'm just trying to, kind of give very high level details here. Okay.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a query. I would like.
Yeah, okay. Probably if you can just hold on for a minute, I have one more slide, and then I'll take all the questions that you may have, if you don't mind.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. So here I'm just trying to get a couple of just sample questions, how your PMP questions will be. I mean, it's not a complete representation of all the 200 questions, but it just gives you a heads up on how the questions are going to be, right? So let's just look at this situation. So this is a situation here. Maybe the questions may go for multiple lines, couple of lines to 10, 15 lines also. So be ready. So here the situation is, after the kickoff meeting, 2 team members engage in a casual conversation about the project objectives and deliverables. It is clear they heard different messages during the meeting. One member is so adamant that the other member gives up arguing the point. After talking to the project managers, a second member confirms that the first member is mistaken. So at this point, what is the best course of action? So now as a manager, what you need to do? That's the question here. Okay, so situation, I hope you all understand. So let's just go through the options. So we have 4 options. It's a multiple choice question. So the first option says second team member should send that other team member an email describing what he discovered. The second option is, at the next project meeting, the team member should ask the mistaken team member to describe his interpretation so that the project manager can get everyone on the same page. Third option says the project manager should send out an email to the team restating the project objectives and deliverables. And the final option says, in the next team meeting, the project manager should spend time reviewing a documented scope statement with the goal of identifying this and other false assumptions. Okay, so this is the situation, and we have 4 options. Okay, so I just probably want to get your feel of how you would approach. Okay, can we just quickly run a poll, please, Bina, on this? So you may get a poll. You can select one of these 4 options.
Sure, Krishna.
Yeah.
One moment. So Krishna, for that, I would need the host access. So can you pass the host access to me, and then I'll run the poll.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, one second. So which one should I select here? Agility. I see 2 hosts. Okay, let me try one. Okay, did you get it?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Okay, team, you have the options. You can just look at the options and select one of these 4, whichever you feel is the best course of action. Team, if anyone is not muted, kindly mute yourself. Okay. Okay. So, Bina, do we have responses?
Hey, Krish, this is Mohammed Qasim from Team Agiletics. So I'm monitoring the polling from my end. I think I'm audible. Please confirm, Krish, if you are able.
You are audible. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, great. We got the polling result out of 27 people, 12 people have polled. So 2 people have given option A, and 1 person have given option B, and 8 people have given option C, and again 1 person have given option D.
Okay. Thank you, Qasim. So team, actually, let's look at the options or how to approach it, right? So as a project manager, now the question is, what is the best course of action here? So let's go to the first option A. The second team member should send the other team member an email describing what he discovered. So how is it this going to solve the problem, right? So we need to run to the problem and try to see how we need to solve this. So surely the option A is not going to help, mitigate, close this problem. So we can rule out option A here. So option B, at the next project meeting, the team member should ask the mistaken team member to describe his interpretation so the project manager can get everyone on the same page. Now we know that project manager has already confirmed that the team member is wrong. So it's like, pointing somebody in a team meeting, asking them to talk something and then saying, it is wrong, right? I mean, that's not the right way to do it. So we can rule out option B as well. Then option C talks about the project manager should send out an email to the team restating the project objectives and deliverables. Looks better than option A and B surely at this point. So let's park it. Let's see what the option D is. In the next team meeting, the project manager should spend time reviewing a documented scope statement with the goal of identifying this and other false assumptions. So now with these two in hand, right? So I have seen that a lot of people saying C, right? But what is C going to do? Let's look at it. What is the best course of action? So when we talk about a best course of action, we need to rule out the possibility of any misinterpretations because that is the root cause here, correct? So when you look at our best course, even sending out an email to all the participants on the project objectives is probably, giving room for anybody to read again and get misinterpreted, correct? Maybe not on this particular item, but other items. So if you look at option D, when we're talking about project objectives, so today or tomorrow, it's not going to change much really in a project, and the project is just kicked off. So in the next meeting, our project manager is spending time to go through that completely with the goal of identifying this and other false assumptions, which means, not giving room for any other point to be misinterpreted, and that is going to be discussed, not via email, right? So that is the approach we take. So by learning, by training, right, you get to know what is the right approach, how we can narrow down, how we can eliminate certain possibilities and what is the best approach. So depending on the type, like best, next, right? So those things that we try to narrow down the problem. Okay. So I hope all of you got my point here. So that's where, just looking at PMBOK and then going through PMBOK, a lot of people again have a misinterpretation that questions are going to be from PMBOK. 100% it is not. PMBOK is a framework provider. Questions are not going to be from PMBOK again, right? Okay, so you got it here. And so the 14% here is right. Okay, so it's nothing right or wrong, not to feel bad, but this I'm giving a sample because this is how we learn it during the training, how to approach the questions, how to solve the problem. Okay, so Qasim, do we have, Bino, we have time to go through one more, or can we go to question answers?
Yes. Krish, I think we can go for a scenario 2 as well, and then.
Oh, okay. So can somebody move the slide, please? I don't have control here. So quickly, we'll run through the scenario 2. Bina, can you just move the slide? Or do you, 1 second, do we?
Krish, we have given back access to you.
Oh, okay. So here's the next scenario. You are a project manager of project A. The stakeholder wants you to do 10 different reports as project A's deliverables. Okay. You feel that it is not realistic to produce 10 reports within the allotted budget and timelines. The stakeholder wants to meet with you to negotiate scope before finalizing scope. Which of the following skills are effective in successful negotiations? So let's look at the options. Decline the stakeholder's invite and escalate to upper management. Meet with the stakeholder and explain why you think the scope is not achievable within given timelines and budget. Discuss about either pushing out the release date or adding budget if all 10 reports have to be created. Third is ask stakeholder to create a change request. And fourth option says, since the stakeholder wants to meet with you, she might be open to negotiating. Try to find out what her core business needs are and identify the key reports that will meet those needs. See if those reports can be delivered within the given budget and timelines. Okay, so now we have these four options. So let's quickly look at the poll now. Try to provide your answers and let's discuss quickly. So should I give back the host access?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let me. All right, I've given it.
Krish, I think we have given the host access to the wrong person. I'm just trying to claim the host access.
Okay.
I'm just doing the polling. Okay, so just doing a second poll right now. Okay, here I go. I'm just launching the poll.
Okay, so let's see. Team, all of you kindly participate. It's fine. If we get right or wrong, that's okay, perfectly fine.
So we have received answer from 13 participants. So they're requesting all the participants to place a participant in this polling activity. So that will be helping us to gain more and more knowledge. So right or wrong doesn't matter here. So at least let us give a try how close we are. We'll wait for another 10 seconds, and once I will end the poll and we'll share the poll result.
Okay.
I think we are done. So I think nobody will be doing the polling. So I'm just ending the polling now, and here will be the poll result.
Okay, that's really good to see. 73% have marked D, which is right here. So let me explain why D is probably right. I don't know what was the reason behind D. So let me give the right reason and maybe let's see if it is a coincidence or really that was taken care. So the one thing is when we approach, we can eliminate some answers. So obviously A is not an option. As a manager, you generally do not escalate. So as from a PMI, you will be learning that. So never escalate unless or otherwise it is beyond the project score control at all. So surely option A is ruled out. Then option C, if you look at it, ask stakeholder to create a change request. So the one keyword in the entire scenario that's given us, that doesn't prompt us to go for a change request. Otherwise, if you will learn that anything that anybody is asking will formally go through a change control process. That's what you will be learning in PMP. But here, one point which is talking about is the finalizing the scope. Finalizing the scope, right? So because it's not scope is not baseline date. So without baseline, I can do a number of changes. So option C is ruled out here. And between B and D, B is also okay, right? Meet with stakeholder, explain why you think the scope is not achievable within. And here we are trying to negotiate on the target dates, right? Release date, and try to see if within the budget or something. But D is kind of more better one. The reason is, here one key thing we need to look at is try to find out her core business needs. So I was mentioning earlier, right? Output and outcome. So we are mostly, as managers, we are more focused on output, which is what is the deliverable that we have to give. But we need to look from an outcome perspective. So what is that customer would like? What is the customer would? What is this? How is this deliverable going to add value to the customer? So understand the customer's core business and try to see what are all the reports that will be really, be very helpful for the customer, which could be done within the timeline and budget. So this is giving a little bit more room in terms of, negotiating and also giving focus on customers' outcome and the business. Right? So from that perspective, D would be better option here with negotiation. Okay, so this is just a sample scenarios I've given to make you understand how the questions are going to be. And again, don't take me. And otherwise, not all 200 questions are not going to be like this. There are going to be some calculation questions on earned value management and expected monetary value on risks as well. But most of the questions are going to be situational, so where you need to apply. So there's nothing going to be there. I mean, no questions are going to be like, what is the input from this process or what is the output of this process? I mean, I don't think it's very, very rare to see any questions like that. So all these are, you need to apply the